Part 36. Dimensional Chosen, Only I Know Saitama is the Strongest. Author, Mungbean Garden. Chapter 351. Fanya looked towards the sudden crack in the wall. The cuts were extremely smooth, as if they had been cut open with a sharp knife. But it controls extremely well. In the entire building, only his room suffered such a raid. Who? Fanya was a little frightened. You know, his physical fitness has reached an unreasonable level, but he just suffered a death crisis. What is the strength of the other party? Before he had time to think about it, Fanya once again felt the threat of death. In the dark night sky, a blue sword light appeared out of thin air and approached him again. Fanya quickly dodged and moved his body quickly to the side. The next second, the big tree behind him was split into two halves. Look! Holding the basswood, Fanya's eyes were like two sharp swords, staring coldly ahead. It seemed that the other party really wanted to take down Fanya. If he didn't have the skills to get close to him, he would probably have died by the sword by now. Down. At that moment, even as strong as Fanya, he could feel a little sting on his skin. Looking down, he saw little red spots on his fair skin. It should be the sword just now caused by anger. Who is it? How dare you use such a powerful skill in a residential area? It is simply unscrupulous. This has far exceeded the restrictions of the law and is extremely arrogant. Although now, most people in the world have become ability users. But just like the previous exits from forbidden areas, the military's control over ability users is very strict. The use of abilities in such places where citizens gather is expressly prohibited. But now, Fanya let out a long breath and looked coldly at the place where Jianguang was looking just now. Sure enough, with Fanya's ability, he discovered the other party's existence instantly. I saw a man in black robes standing in the dark night, holding a long blue knife in his hand. Fanya's face was cold. If the other party really comes to take his life, then it is very likely that he did not come alone. There are people. But now, Fanya only judged the location of one person, and as for the others, he didn't even have a hint of perception. Moreover, Fanya is still in a residential area. Even if the opponent has a mysterious sword in his hand, Fanya is not afraid. But now, if he were to attack with all his strength, the surrounding residents would most likely be in danger. This is what he doesn't want to see. His figure flashed, and Fanya disappeared into the jungle again. Soon, he put on a special mobile phone card and contacted the military. What? The other party actually attacked in a residential area, and he didn't even want to show his face. The general was shocked. He obviously didn't expect that the other party would be so arrogant. At the same time, he also began to worry about Fanya. You did a great job. Now you just need to protect yourself. We will send people to support you immediately. Forget it, I'll go in person, and I must hold on until we rush there. After hanging up the phone, Fanya clung to the tree like a divine ape. But soon, Fanya's sense of danger was alerted again. Dodge subconsciously. A ray of sword light struck across the sky again, cutting off the tree where he was just now. Along with the surrounding trees, they were all cut away like leaks. I have the ability to sense, even if you hide in the ends of the earth, I can still find your existence. A dull voice came, and Fanya couldn't help but frown slightly. Perception ability? In this case, it seems that he doesn't even have to hide. In this case, Fanya let out a long breath, quickly walked out of the jungle, and faced the man in black robe. Who are you? Fanya stared at the man in front of him with cold eyes. At the same time, he was still observing the surroundings, trying to find out if there was anyone else. We've met. The man in black robe spoke coldly, and the confidence in his words seemed to have pinched Fanya's hand. The next second, the man in black robe raised the steel knife again and pointed it at Fanya. This time, Fang Ye didn't dodge, but strike directly. His right fist quickly turned into flames, and he punched the opponent violently. The fiery red flames illuminated the surroundings, approaching the opponent's door. At the same time, the opponent also slashed with a knife, facing Fang Ye's flames. Boom! There was an explosion out of thin air, and the powerful flames were actually split in half by the man. But Fang Ye did not panic at all, and controlled the flames in the air to attack the man again. The flames exploded directly, making a huge sound. The sound. The overwhelming flames instantly enveloped the man in black robe. Soon, a man's roar came from the explosion. The sword light came out frequently, splitting the explosion's fire one after another. But Fang Ye refused to give up, and the flames were split. But the explosion continued. In an instant, the man in black robe was wrapped up again. Immediately afterwards, Fang Ye no longer carried him in place, but took action directly. After all, there may be people around who have not taken action until now. Waiting and watching. If they were to fire a cold shot, Fang Ye would be at a disadvantage again. Fang Ye was extremely fast and at the same time compressed his own abilities so as not to endanger the surrounding citizens. Suddenly, flames shot into the sky. Fang Ye was like a statue. The god of fire rushed forward. He shattered the void with a punch, pulled out a long blast in the air, and approached directly. The black robe on the man's body had been burned to pieces by the flames. Facing Fang Ye's powerful blow, fist, he quickly raised the steel knife horizontally and resisted with all his strength. Bang! Fang Ye punched the steel knife hard. The force of the punch penetrated the steel knife and directly acted on the man's body. The whole man flew out. Poof! The man he vomited a mouthful of blood and looked at Fang Ye in front of him in disbelief. It was so powerful. Just one punch almost made him unable to bear it. He fell heavily to the ground, his blood and energy surged, and his internal organs were all shaken. Was shattered. By forcefully operating his ability, the man's complexion improved slightly. He slashed out the steel knife in his hand one after another while still shouting at the side. What are you still looking at? Why don't you take action? After giving the order, Fang Ye, who was preparing to pursue the victory, calmed down in an instant and observed his surroundings. There was no movement in the dark night sky. Just when Fang Ye thought that the opponent was struggling to his death. Suddenly, Fang Ye's temples tightened, and then his whole body rolled backwards. Bang! A sharp object brushed Fang Ye's temples and fell directly to the ground. Click! The ground began to crack, and began to melt due to the high temperature. He watched it start to melt. On the ground, Fang Ye was a little cautious. Fang Ye looked towards the center of the ground and saw a bullet-shaped thing the size of a little finger still spinning in place. And it was spinning very fast, causing waves of heat. Dimensional chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 352. Fang Ye turned his head and looked in the opposite direction. In an instant, a person appeared in Fang Ye's sight again. He saw that person holding something similar to a sniper rifle and facing him. The man seemed to know that Fang Ye had seduced him, and the mirror used to aim at him flashed. The next second, Fang Ye felt a sting on his forehead. Sometimes crisis sense. Fang Ye rolled again and at the same time rushed towards the sniper a few hundred meters away on the right. For Fang Ye, this distance can be reached in almost the blink of an eye. The man only felt that he blinked and saw Fang Ye appearing in front of him. Immediately afterwards, huge fists came down overwhelmingly, and a layer of cold sweat broke out from behind. The man couldn't help but tremble, but still controlled his body to move in other directions. But since the other party had killed him, how could Fang Ye give him a chance to escape? The next second, Fang Ye's fist hit even harder. That man was quite strong and his dodge speed was quite fast. But Fang Ye's fist is faster. Stab. Just one step slower, the man's right arm was torn off by Fan Ye's fist. Suddenly, the blood was like a fountain. Ah! The man screamed. His whole body was covered with scars from Fan Ye's fist. He didn't care about his broken arm and kept retreating. At the same time, the blue sword light appeared again, heading straight towards Fan Ye's head. Trouble! Fan Ye snorted coldly, and quickly retreated, dodging the sword light with a strange posture. Then, two more sword lights came. Fan Ye still dodged it steadily, and at the same time, his figure exploded with speed. Move forward. The moment he changed his position, several bullet-like attacks came from two tricky angles. Two more. Fan Ye frowned and moved his body. One of the two bullets missed, and the other hit the grass. A big hole suddenly appeared. Fan Ye no longer hesitated and shot directly in one direction. Only Fan Ye could see Fan Ye's left hand grew rapidly, just like the Wuhan he faced back then. Seeing Fan Ye's palm getting closer and closer, the man seemed to have seen a ghost, standing motionless in place. The next second, his Fan Ye held his head tightly in his hands. With a little force, his brains splattered everywhere. Another one was killed. So far, there were only two people left. One was a man holding a big knife in front of him. He must have done some damage to him with his heavy punch just now. There was a little influence. There was also a sniper hiding in the dark. He watched Fan Ye take two shots, one of his teammates was killed and one was injured. He probably also changed positions. He would not take action easily again. Although they are desperados. But he is not a fool. He will not consciously come out to seek death. Then what is left is the man holding a steel knife in front of Fan Ye. Tell me why you are struggling, today we will decide your fate. The man said coldly, pulling off his black robe. What was revealed was a masked face and tattoos on his arms. Looking at the familiar symbol, Fan Ye was slightly startled and raised a question. Raised eyebrows. Death coffin. Know us. The man said coldly. Why don't you come over and die quickly? I think you are the one who is going to die. Before he finished speaking, Fan Ye's whole body shot out. He suddenly punched out, and there was an explosion in the air. The man's face changed drastically, and he quickly activated his ability. Soon, on his body surface, it was covered with a thick layer of stone armor. Immediately after the second layer of ability was activated, the stone armor began to melt, and the outer layer turned into lava, exuding a terrifying temperature. The moment he placed the knife in front of him, Fan Ye's fist fell. Boom! A huge explosion sounded, and fire shot out in an instant. Straight into the sky. The terrifying temperature seemed to melt the ground. And the man who was full of confidence just now, faced with Fan Ye, after the terrifying punch, he gradually became unable to parry. His figure quickly retreated, and even the original lava armor on his body began to fall off. Having adapted to the temperature of the lava, he actually found Fan Ye's flaming fist very terrifying. Bang! At this moment, another gunshot was heard. Fan Ye felt a stinging pain on the back of his head. He quickly turned the back of his head, then quickly pinched the tip of the knife with his right hand, and with a force. Click! The red-hot steel knife instantly he broke off a small piece. He threw it towards the back, and soon there was a clear puff sound. Next, except for the sniper who just tore off half of Fan Ye's arm, the only one left in front of him was a man now. Hateful! The man snorted coldly and still stared at Fan Ye fiercely. He now knows that there are only two endings, either he kills Fan Ye, or he is killed by Fan Ye. Judging from the current situation, it is probably the latter. Rather than die in Fan Ye's hands, it would be better. The man thought, and a crisp click sound came from his mouth. Soon, a stream of black blood overflowed from the corner of the man's mouth. Fang Ye also noticed his condition and immediately realized that this man should have committed suicide by taking poison. The poisons used by such a killer organization are probably not ordinary things, and now they are probably at the end of their rope. Looking at the man who fell to the ground with a thump in front of him, Fang Ye casually threw down a flame. But soon, he remembered the man with a broken arm from before. Since they have poison, does that mean? Fang Ye also planned to capture him alive and send him to the military headquarters. Fang Ye hurried over to check. I saw that the man's face was dark and purple, and the black blood at the corner of his mouth was almost solidified. He was already dead and could no longer die. Sighing, Fang Ye turned to look at his house that was almost split in half. Then he looked at the melted ground, the chopped trees, and the burnt lawn. This is really a troublesome thing to deal with. Soon, the military personnel arrived. Seeing such a big scene, several people quickly went on alert. But soon, Fang Ye appeared and waved to a few people. Don't worry, I've solved everything. All solved. Everyone was slightly startled. Sure enough, a hero comes from a boy. A familiar figure walked out of the crowd, and Fang Ye also smiled and nodded to him. General, I didn't expect to meet you so soon. Yes. The general also had a wry smile on his face. Now that everything has been resolved, let's withdraw the team and go to a few people to clean up the aftermath. We must block these messages. Do you understand? Clear. Very good. The general nodded and turned to look at Fang Ye. The wall that was split open must be your house. It seems that you have no place to stay tonight. Do you want to go to our military headquarters to deal with it, and prevent those people from coming to the door again? Fang Ye thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. Good. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dimensional Chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 353. Military Dormitory. The general specially found a single room and asked his secretary to prepare some daily necessities. You stay here for one night, and I'll try to find a place for you as soon as possible. The general said, and actually helped Fang Ye clean it up himself. The two of them worked together, plus the secretary. The three of them quickly cleaned up the dormitory. Fang Ye then became free and took a look at the general's work. The room he prepared was more like an apartment than a dormitory. One bedroom, one living room, and a large balcony. It was much better than his previous house. That movement just now. Fang Ye looked at the general. The general patted his chest, confident that, don't worry, someone has already gone to handle it. They are professionals. As he said that, the general thought for a while and explained. You also broke through the forbidden area. The forbidden area will give more or less certain rewards to the trialists. In our military department, there is a person with the ability to erase other people's memories. Fang Ye raised his eyebrows. Erase memory? Sounds pretty powerful. Wouldn't it be a big killer on the battlefield? Soon, he thought of it. If such a person displays his abilities on the battlefield, wouldn't he be able to catch his opponent off guard? After hearing this, the general shook his head. It's not that simple. It's not easy to erase other people's memories. In a community like yours, he needs a long preparation time to erase their memories of one night. This effect is almost insignificant on the battlefield. And no one would allow him to prepare for such a long time. His opponent was not a free man. After listening to the general's words, Fang Ye nodded clearly. Understood. As he said that, Fang Ye thought of something else. He looked at the general who was washing his hands aside. When we were fighting just now, there was a kind of gun on the other side. I always felt that it posed a great threat to me. Have today's guns developed to this level? After listening to Fang Ye's words, the general was stunned for a moment. After shaking off the water on his hand, the general reacted and said with a smile, "That's not a gun." The general said and made a gesture and said, "Ordinary guns have lost their effectiveness in front of people with abilities, but that person should have given abilities to the guns, and the bullets have also been modified. So." The general talked a lot and finally closed his mouth for a long time. Finally, the general looked at Fang Ye and said with a smile, "Let's put aside today's matters for now. Our military department has full authority to handle this matter. As for your little girlfriend, I have strengthened the troops there, don't worry." "Good." Fang Ye nodded. She glanced at him gratefully. After the general left, Fang Ye lay on the bed and began to recall the details of tonight. "Before I knew it, 2 hours passed and it was late at night. Fang Ye showed no sign of wanting to sleep. On the contrary, I felt a little uneasy in my heart. I originally thought I was invincible, but I didn't expect." Fang Ye thought about the battle just now. There were streaks of blue sword light and bullets that kept spinning. Indeed, it can pose a threat to him. Suddenly, Fang Ye seemed to have thought of something. He took out his cell phone and clicked on Suzuki's contact information. "Are you there?" Suzuki's response quickly came from the other end, followed closely by a sweating soybean expression. "It's all your fault. After being warned by you, I almost couldn't sleep." Looking at the text sent by Suzuki, Fang Ye curled up the corner of his mouth. Her petty and angry expression automatically appeared in front of his eyes. Fang Ye comforted her a few words, but did not tell her what just happened. "Have you ever felt anything unusual?" Fang Ye asked. A message the other party is typing quickly appeared on the chat interface. But soon, it disappeared again. Followed by 2 words. "Fine." After a while, Suzuki continued to reply. "Nothing was wrong except that I couldn't sleep." Looking at Suzuki's answer, Fang Ye breathed a sigh of relief. "Since you can't sleep, let's talk." "Good." Then, the two started chatting here and there. From interesting things in childhood to recent situations. Looking at the chat records between the two, Fang Ye smiled. In the end, the two were not happy and started talking directly. Picked up the phone. "Hello?" Fang Ye asked. "Do you have any plans to break into forbidden areas recently?" Suzuki nodded, his voice already a little tired. "Yes, have you read the information about Forbidden Land number 9? I don't think it's a big problem. See, I also plan to try to enter the forbidden area in the last few days. If nothing else happens, let's go together." "Good." Suzuki nodded, with a little joy on his face. Since entering the Martial Saint Academy, she can count the golden legends she has obtained on one hand. And every time, Fang Ye is there to protect him. Looking back on herself going to the Forbidden Land alone, she has never reached the golden legend evaluation. So she also saw clearly that as long as Fang Ye is there, the Forbidden Land's evaluation will not be bad. And Suzuki is thoughtful, she learned from the chat with Fang Ye, and felt a trace of uneasiness from the other party. But since Fang Ye didn't say anything, she didn't ask any more questions. Thinking about it, Suzuki also got up from the bed and walked to the window. She was about to say something, but she heard Fang Ye's voice was a little nervous on the other end of the phone. "Wait, is there someone outside your house?" Fang Ye's heart was lifted. "Anyone?" Suzuki was a little confused and said with a smile. "Are you suffering from paranoia? It's so late, how could anyone be there?" Fang Ye ignored her teasing and directly sent the video conversation invitation. Suzuki agreed, and a pretty little face appeared on the screen. She pouted at Fang Ye with some reproach. "It's late at night, what are you doing with the video?" Fang Ye ignored it, instead frowned and said softly, "Turn the camera toward the window." Suzuki was stunned. Didn't this guy come to see her? But soon, she reacted and did as she was told. Looking at the dark scene, Fang Ye frowned. But soon, he saw from the video something strange was discovered. Immediately afterwards, the whole person's spirit was lifted up involuntarily. In the darkness, there seemed to be another figure, constantly shuttling in the darkness. The figure of that person was extremely fast, and ordinary people would never be able to discover it. But Fang Ye's mental power has reached a terrifying level. Just through the movement on the screen, Fang Ye noticed the figure of that person. But in order to avoid misunderstanding, Fang Ye still asked softly, "Are there security guards on duty in your community at night?" Suzuki thought for a while, poked his chin with a finger and replied, "Yes, there are, but the security guards in our community together are not enough for one tooth. They should be lazy and sleeping now." Hearing this, Fang Ye sighed as if accepting his fate, and then reminded, "Don't make a sound, I'm going over now." Dimensional Chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 354. Now. Suzuki was stunned. "It's so late at night, why are you here?" But before she could ask, Fang Ye hung up the phone. Looking at the hang-up interface, Suzuki fell into a slight daze. But soon, she also reacted, "Come here." Fang Ye's voice seemed to be much more solemn than before. So she didn't think randomly, but just like Fang Ye said, she stayed where she was and waited. At the same time, Fang Ye quickly found the general who had not gone far. Said directly, "I suspect that Suzuki already has someone with a death coffin." Now. The general was stunned for a moment. The people he sent out did not receive any news. Hold on. The general immediately sent a phone call. The voice on the other end of the phone was very relaxed, as if he was on vacation. "There is no one. We have been waiting here for a long time, and we didn't notice anyone sneaking in at all." The general shrugged and told Fang Ye the news from the other side. But Fang Ye didn't feel relaxed at all. Instead, he looked at the general with serious eyes. Judging from the style of this group of desperados, if they find out Suzuki's identity, they will definitely not do anything. And based on their intelligence level, since they can find out my identity, Suzuki will definitely not be able to escape their sight. If you can't find your people, it only means that the other party's concealment methods are very strong. In fact, if the other party takes action, your people will probably be killed invisibly. After saying that, Fang Ye turned around and planned to go over. Hearing Fang Ye's words, the general was a little unhappy. The ones he sent were elites. If he couldn't even detect the other party's existence, how strong would the other party be? Think about it. As he looked, he began to look a little unhappy. Assuming that there really were people with death coffins, not even the elites he sent could do it. So what would change if Fang Ye was gone? Well. The general sighed and stood up directly. "I'll go with you." Fang Ye turned to look at the general, then nodded and urged, "Hurry up." The general was speechless. "I originally thought that I would go there with him." Fang Ye must be grateful no matter what, and he must be a little flattered and frightened. But this kid actually urged himself to hurry up. I don't think anyone would dare to talk to him like this after he has been sitting in this position for many years. But after thinking about it, the general nodded, adjusted his clothes a little, and took Fang Ye out of the military headquarters. "How do we get there?" The general spread his hands. "It's still more than 10 kilometers away from your little girlfriend's villa. Go running." Fang Ye didn't say much and stepped forward. In an instant, Fang Ye's figure disappeared from the general's sight. Looking at Fang Ye, who turned into a streak of light, the general was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "This kid is really anxious." After saying that, he also started to take steps. As he stepped out, the ground seemed to be broken. It seemed like a simple step, but it was a full step of dozens of meters. After a while, the two arrived at the villa complex where Suzuki was located. The general followed slowly, looked at Fang Ye's figure already standing at the door, and said doubtfully, "Why don't you go in?" Fang Ye turned to look at the general and asked, "If you encounter the other party head-on, can you take action directly?" The general was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "Don't worry, we are professionals." "Well." Fang Ye nodded and stepped directly into it. When passing by the security booth, Fang Ye briefly glanced at it. He saw that the security guard who Suzuki said was not enough for a tooth was lying in it sleeping with his back stretched out. The two walked in side by side, and soon arrived outside Suzuki's villa. "Let's find those people I sent first," the general suggested softly while looking at the silent surroundings. Soon, he found a group of people. But the scene in front of him stunned the general. He saw only the two elites he sent. Are they running around in circles at this moment? But when the general appeared in front of them, it was as if he didn't see it. "How many of you?" Looking at their appearance, the general couldn't help but growl. After the voice fell, the few people did not make any movement and were still spinning in circles, as if they were possessed by evil spirits. It seems that their spirits have been disturbed, and they don't know to what extent they are disturbed now. Fang Ye also noticed those people and reminded him softly, "It seems true as you said, General," with a wry smile on his face. Unexpectedly, none of the news he sent back was true. It is estimated that these people have been mentally controlled from a long time ago. If Fang Ye didn't insist on coming, it is very likely that they would have been killed in such a mysterious way. Is there any way? The general was a little at a loss. He had no way to deal with this kind of mental attack. Fang Ye shook his head, took a step forward and said, "The best way is to knock them unconscious." The general was stunned for a moment, then nodded helplessly. "That's all." After saying that, the two men stepped forward together. They turned their palms into swords and lightly slashed the backs of several people's necks. Then, several people fell down as if they had lost all strength. The general opened their eyelids and took a look, only to see their eyes are still moving. "What's happening here?" The general was stunned for a moment. Fang Ye glanced at it and said softly, "It seems that the opponent's ability is likely to be a skill related to dreaming, allowing them to fall into a dream, or even sleepwalk. The eyeballs keep moving, which means that they have not surrendered to each other's control, but we have temporarily cut off the connection between body control and dreams. It seems that the other party has not wanted to kill them yet, otherwise there would be a few corpses by now." As he spoke, Fang Ye glanced around and said loudly, "After watching it for so long, it's time to show off." The energetic voice echoed around. Soon, it slowly fell again, but no trace of other people appeared. The general could not help but frown. So hidden. He sat down in the general's position casually, but there was no way to deal with mental attacks. But Fang Ye was not bothered by this. His ears twitched, his eyes quickly moved, and he punched a tree suddenly. Hit. Boom. The huge fist fell, and the trees did not collapse as expected. Instead, it was like throwing a stone in a calm lake, causing thousands of waves. Soon, the calm gradually returned. "What's happening here?" The general looked at this strange situation in disbelief. Fang Ye frowned slightly and said coldly, "It looks like we've been hooked." The words fell, followed by a harsh voice. "Ha ha ha ha, welcome to my dreamland. Dimensional chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest." Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 355. Dream. Hearing this unknown voice, the general on the side was stunned. Soon, he reacted. His eyes were cold and he looked ahead. An illusion. The general clenched his fist hard, and his nails carved a bloody mark on his palm. With a wave of his hand, a golden light burst out from his hand and hit a big tree. Click. The tree broke instantly, and then was shattered into pieces. The broken wood was jagged. The white stubble of the hand is particularly real. And the feeling of blow in the hand is real. A trace of doubt flashed on the general's face. This feeling, it's not like he fell into the environment. Then he relaxed his mind and scanned his surroundings vigilantly. Seeing his confused look, Fanya understood. He had felt this effect on Nightmare before. Although it is an illusion, the impact on oneself is real. And something is different. Fanya is doubting now. If I die in this dream, does it really mean death? Dare you show up? What a good guy it is to hide in the shadows. Besides, the fainted soldier slowly woke up and shouted hoarsely towards the sky. His eyes were full of panic. He didn't feel the slightest illusion after being cast on him before. This means that the other party definitely killed him on the spot. Ability. The voice echoed in the night sky, but there was no response. For a long time. The mysterious voice came out of the sky again. If you want to see me, just come out of my dream first. But, it's not that easy. As soon as he finished speaking, Fanya clearly felt that the ground was shaking. Get out of the way. Suddenly, Fanya shouted loudly, and he picked up the soldier lying on the ground with one hand, and quickly retreated. Hearing Fanya's voice, the general without thinking, grabbed the sleeping soldier with both hands, and his body flashed. Boom. The next moment, a sudden change occurred where the few people were originally. The concrete ground suddenly cracked. A thick metal thorn broke out of the ground. And it was still spinning at high speed, changing direction towards the few people coming after him. Looking at the approaching metal thorns, the general's eyes were slightly stern, and a golden light condensed in his right hand. Just when the golden light was about to strike, a swift figure suddenly passed by him and stood in front of the metal thorns. Superior. Fanyet. The general was slightly startled. He saw the constantly rotating metal thorn colliding head-on with Fanyet's fist. However, Fanyet's fist was not pierced as he imagined. On the other hand, the metal thorn was under Fanyet's fist. It is deforming at a speed visible to the naked eye. Moreover, the speed of rotation is also decreasing sharply. A trace of disdain flashed in his eyes, and his right fist suddenly increased force. Boom! There was a thunder on the ground, and an explosion-like sound. Soaring into the sky. The ground shattered directly, and a large amount of dust shot up. But soon, the dust and smoke dissipated, and Fanya was still standing in place intact. But the huge metal thorn had been seriously damaged. Deformed into a discus. Oh! As expected of the person being targeted by God, he does have some abilities. But I can create countless metal thorns like this out of thin air. It depends on what you can do to stop them. The man's voice came from the void again. Immediately after the ground continued to collapse, dense metal pierced the earth and came out, attacking Fanyet. Such a huge offensive, even the general couldn't help but change his color slightly. Well, the soldier in his hand was thrown to the ground, and his hands glowed with golden light at the same time, and he was about to take action. But Fanya didn't panic at all. His arms instantly turned fiery red, exuding a terrifying temperature. Boom! Fire suddenly erupted all over his body, and the blazing temperature swept across him instantly all around. Feeling this terrifying temperature, the general's face was full of surprise. He quickly emitted a golden light, wrapped a few people, and continued to retreat. The next second, a scorching wave of fire hit. Feeling this terrifying temperature, the expression on the general's face couldn't help but become a little more exciting. He looked at the fireball in front of him in shock. Fanyet's figure was looming in it. This explosion, is this really what this kid did? The general couldn't believe it. But when it exploded just now, he did see it clearly. Is this really a dream? With a confused look, the general reached out and slapped the soldier who had just woken up on the back of his neck. Does it hurt? The man grinned and turned red by the general's powerful and heavy slap. But soon, he forced a smile and shook his head with a grin. It doesn't hurt. The general rolled his eyes at him and snorted coldly. Duplicity. But, then it's not a dream. Until now, the general has not understood the situation. And the reason why he is as strong as he is today is entirely because of his physical strength. Put it on the battlefield and fight 1 against 100. If it were a single round of mental power, it might be inferior to many people. So here, he can't think of any effective way for the time being. In a blink of an eye, the firelight dissipated. Fang Ye's figure appeared in sight. I saw those powerful drill bits, and it was obvious that they had been turned around by the explosion just now. It has undergone varying degrees of deformation and has obviously lost its combat effectiveness. Before the other party could react, Fang Ye kicked his feet suddenly, and a fierce light of fire came out from behind him. The whole person turned into a line of fire and disappeared instantly. Fang Ye. Hearing the sudden sound from behind, Fang Ye stopped opening the door and looked back. He saw Suzuki running towards the side quickly, with a look of horror on his face. He got directly into Fang Ye's arms. Suzuki said in shock. Brother Ye, what happened? I was just getting ready to go to bed when I heard someone fighting outside. I'm so scared. Suzuki's voice was soft, like a frightened little white rabbit seeking comfort in Fang Ye's arms. Brother Ye, please take me away, please. I'm really scared. Looking at Suzuki, who looked pitiful, Fang Ye's eyes were slightly solemn. Snapped. Fang Ye pushed the poor Suzuki away and said with an indifferent expression. Don't be disgusted with me and show your true colors. When Suzuki heard what Fang Ye said, his body froze, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes, but he quickly reacted. Big tears fell down, and he said in a crying voice. Brother Ye, what are you talking about? I am Suzuki. Don't you care about me? Well. The little girl seemed to have made up her mind. She stamped her feet fiercely, turned around and walked in the opposite direction. Before she took 2 steps, her delicate arm was pinched by Fang Ye. A trace of joy flashed on her face, and she turned around quickly. She was about to throw herself into Fang Ye's arms. But soon, she was pushed away by Fang Ye. Moreover, as Fang Ye continued to exert force, the arm that was strangled by him also turned a layer of blue. Stop pretending, you are not Suzuki. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dimensional Chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mungbean Garden. Chapter 356. Suzuki's eyes flashed with surprise. The expression on his face began to change, and finally he looked at Fang Ye fiercely, ignoring his somewhat deformed arms, and said coldly. How did you figure it out? You don't need to know this. Fang Ye returned coldly, and with his right hand he gathered fire and punched out suddenly. Puff! Fang Ye's punch hit that ferocious face, but it was as if it hit cotton, without the slightest touch. All he could see was that face. The familiar face was punched through by Fang Ye like smoke. When Fang Ye withdrew his fist, he slowly returned to his previous appearance. Want to defeat me in my dream, wishful thinking. Ha 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 ha. Suzuki smiled, and Zhou Sheng raised a black smoke and enveloped it. Immediately afterwards, the smoke dissipated. What appeared in front of Fang Ye was a man wearing a black robe. The hat slowly fell off, revealing it was a ferocious face. The whole face seemed to have been cut off in half. Only one left ear, one left eye, and even the nose had been cut off completely. Looking at this ferocious face, Fan Ye suddenly felt a chill. Boy, you are not the first person to see my true face. There are many before you, but those people are all dead without exception. The man smiled ferociously, and the corners of his mouth that were cut opened and closed, as if he was breathing heavily. The next second, the man turned into a puff of smoke and floated in all directions. I said, "This is my dream, you only have a dead end." As he spoke, he seemed to blend into the world. His wild laughter was overwhelming, and it was extremely harsh. Fan Ye watched coldly as the prey in his hand disappeared. His eyes were indeed surprisingly calm, without any panic. "Then it's up to me, wake you up." As soon as he finished speaking, a fierce flame suddenly erupted from Fan Ye's body. Immediately afterwards, half of Fan Ye's body was transformed into flames. The other half of his body was undergoing distortions as seen in his eyes. The bone spurs broke through the skin, ferociously pointing in all directions. This is Wuhan's ability. Under Fan Ye's extraordinary mental strength, it has been amplified to a level that even Wuhan can't match. Boom! Fan Ye's right fist turned into flames, and he shot out a fireball. The fireball shot straight into the sky, almost lighting up this dark dreamland, and then exploded in mid-air. It was like a brilliant firework. Then the left hand like a giant claw suddenly shot out like a bullet, pointing straight into the sky. It wasn't until an outrageous height that Fan Ye's left hand could barely stop. It wasn't that his ability had reached its limit. It was that he had touched the boundary. Really? Fan Ye curled his lips and swiped the bone spur on his left hand. Stab. There was a sound of brocade tearing in the sky, and a gap appeared in response. Ah! Suddenly. A scream suddenly came from the void. Fan Ye did not stop the movement of his hands. Wu Kongshu. Fan Ye's figure floated up and soared up. His left hand also shortened simultaneously, until the arm shortened to normal size. When he came, Fan Ye stopped. The man just now was also looking at Fan Ye in the void. Seeing him approaching, his voice became a little frightened. "You, what are you going to do?" The shrill voice reached his ears, but Fan Ye smiled slightly. "I said, I want to wake you up." After saying that, his flaming right fist condensed a fireball the size of his head, and he shot it out violently. Boom! The fireball hit the invisible barrier and exploded directly. Dots of firelight fell, as brilliant as a shooting star. Look at it intently. Go. The sky seemed to have traces of being scorched. His left fist was drawn out again, and another huge gap appeared in his sight. The next second, Fan Ye opened his bow from left to right. The sky that seemed out of reach was actually it was under Fan Ye's hands that he gradually became scarred. The sounds of tearing and explosions were endless. "Get out of here." Fan Ye waved his left hand down, and the sharp bone spurs neatly cut off a large piece of the sky. Then his left hand reached out again, stretching infinitely. The next second, Fan Ye's left arm suddenly tightened, and he pulled back violently. Screams continued to be heard from deep in the sky, getting closer and closer. Soon, that ugly face appeared in Fan Ye's sight again. The only difference from before was that this time the man was in an extremely embarrassing situation. His face was full of there were traces of burns and cuts. Moreover, the black robe on his body became tattered, and there were flames burning on it. He tried to extinguish these flames, but no matter how he slapped them, these flames seemed to have life, and instead became more and more serious. The fever grew stronger and stronger. It even burned onto his palms. At this moment, his throat was tightly strangled by Fan Ye, and he was forced to meet Fan Ye's eyes. Seeing those calm eyes, the man's legs softened, and his whole body the man collapsed helplessly. If Fan Ye hadn't been holding him up, he would have probably fallen down and turned into a puddle of meat. Gradually, the man calmed down. Suppressing the fear in his heart, he looked at Fan Ye and said, I advise you to put me down. Although I don't know why you can break my dream, this area is still under my control. As he spoke, he looked towards the villa not far away with a trembling voice. There must be your little girlfriend there, ha ha ha. Everyone related to you is now under our control. So what if you can kill me? Besides. A fierce look flashed in the man's single eye, and he said with an evil smile. As long as you dare to make the slightest move, your little girlfriend who is still sleeping will be drilled into a sieve by countless new drills. As he spoke, a trace of confidence flashed across the man's face. But when he looked at Fang Ye, the smile on his face disappeared instantly. Fang Ye was still looking at him indifferently, without any fluctuation in his eyes. Obviously, those words just now didn't even make Fang Ye feel a wave of emotion in his heart. Being stared at by those indifferent eyes, a layer of cold sweat broke out unconsciously on the man's burned back. Immediately afterwards, there was also a layer of cold sweat on his forehead. I was covered in cold sweat, and even my body started to shake a little. Do you think I'm kidding? If you don't believe me, try it, and see who is faster, you or me. The man panicked, his voice trembling. But no matter what he said, Fang Ye's eyes remained unmoved, as if in his eyes, the man was just a lamb to be slaughtered. The man panicked. This time he really panicked. The reason why he joined the death coffin was just to go to the so-called forbidden land of the gods. Being selfish by nature, he never thought about paying anything for others. The reason why he came to hunt Fang Ye was actually the equivalent exchange. But now, he encountered a death crisis. Looking into Fang Ye's eyes, the man was still dodging at first, and in the end he even went crazy. Ha 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 ha, as expected, you are with that girl just for her skin. Since I can no longer escape your clutches, let me do a good deed. The man said crazily, with a fierce look on his face. The next second, the ground suddenly began to shake. The man was pricking up his only ear, wanting to hear Suzuki's screams in the villa. But he couldn't hear it. In his mind, he could hear nothing except the sound of bones breaking. The next second, his vision went dark, and he fell upside down. Dimensional Chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 357. Fang Ye looked down at the man who fell to the ground and sneered. It seems that your so-called dream is not that good either. He retracted the bone spurs on his arms, and then slowly landed. The man's spine had been broken by the blow just now, and he lost all mobility in an instant. After falling like this, all the bones in his body were directly broken. I'm afraid it will happen again. There was no chance to use his inexplicable ability. Fang Ye looked around and found that he had indeed escaped from the dream. Sure enough, as long as the ability user fainted, the so-called dream would have no chance to show off. In fact, Fang Ye also some were curious about the source of his ability, and the reason why he suddenly appeared and launched a sudden attack on him and the general. The general obviously also had this suspicion, and he looked at the man in black robe with murderous intent in his eyes. Fang Ye, can this person be handed over to our military department? The general frowned and looked at the man in black robes for a while, especially after thinking about his face for a long time, and still shook his head. In his impression, no such person existed. However, with the strength of the military department, he wanted to find him. It shouldn't be very difficult. The general believes that the military headquarters will definitely give him and the organization behind him a thunderous blow at that time. Let them know the fate of attacking the general. It's okay, but just wait a while. Fang Ye picked up the man and looked at the villa not far away. Okay, no problem. The general nodded in understanding. He had just heard the last words of the man in black robes. Suzuki seemed to have taken advantage of this man. If there is really any problem, this man needs to do something to save Suzuki. After all, The general probably also had some suspicions about the relationship between Suzuki and Fang Ye. Fang Ye and Suzuki came back from the 8th Forbidden Land together, and the forbidden items Suzuki got should have been obtained by Fang Ye for her. This great master has broken through the 6th form. This is a forbidden area. This is the first time that I have helped others obtain forbidden items. It seems that Suzuki is indeed very special to the great god Fang Ye. What's more, the general still has something to ask for from Fang Ye. Since he can help Suzuki get out of the forbidden area, bringing things out means that he does have a way. This is something that no one has been able to do for many years. Everyone thinks that it would be great to get some rewards from the Forbidden Land. If you get superpowers, even more it's a big deal about the smoke coming out of the ancestral tomb. No one has ever thought that anything can be brought out from it. Even if, some of the technology and combat power in the forbidden area, not to mention the military, even Guochia is envious. But this time, someone has done it. That is the great god Fang Ye. How can the general not be moved? And looking at his strength, I am afraid no one can threaten him, which is a great help. Even if he is not willing to join the military, it doesn't matter, as long as we can form a good relationship. And this person was not defeated by their military at all. If Fang Ye happened to be here to deal with him, the general believed that he would definitely be in trouble. Maybe he would be ignored. The sound of killing here. This man was defeated and captured by Fang Ye. He was willing to hand this man over to their military headquarters. The general was very satisfied and grateful. Besides, it only took a while for Fang Ye to take him there. If there was nothing wrong with Suzuki, Fang Ye would definitely hand over the man in black robe to them without saying a word. Comparing the two, what else could the general be dissatisfied with? He watched Fang Ye drag the man in black robe into the villa. From behind, the general sighed, looked around at his subordinates who were confused as if they were just waking up from a dream, and shook his head. Comparing people with each other makes people angry. In the villa, Suzuki let out a sigh and slowly opened his eyes. She just had a very scary dream. In the dream, a group of steel drills surrounded her from all sides, making it impossible for her to break free or escape. The mark suit was also completely unusable, and she could only be trapped among these drills, watching helplessly as Fang Ye hugged a person who looked exactly like herself. Suddenly he fought with a man in black robe. Finally, she woke up suddenly in the fire that filled the sky. Fang Ye. Suzuki almost jumped out of bed, but soon she realized that she was still in the villa and the surrounding environment had not changed. Is it a dream? Suzuki rubbed his temples blankly, feeling very depressed and preparing to lie down and rest for a while again. What dream? Suddenly, a familiar voice came from not far away. Suzuki subconsciously turned his head and looked blankly at Fang Ye, who was sitting not far away. Why are you in a daze? Fang Ye didn't quite understand why Suzuki suddenly became a little stupid, but looking at her like this, she shouldn't have been hurt. It was in vain that he came over to see if something was wrong with her. No. No, why are you here? Suzuki suddenly pulled the pillow in front of her and asked in horror. If she didn't trust Fang Ye, she would have almost taken out the hand laser cannon of the mark armor. Although it was estimated that it would not really cause any harm to Fang Ye. Got it? There was a problem just now, and it has been solved for the time being. Fang Ye said, stood up from the chair, and bent down to lift the man. Only then did Suzuki realize that the dark guy she had always ignored and thought was a footstool was a human being. Is this guy? Suzuki asked doubtfully, and at the same time subconsciously looked at the man in black. She vaguely felt that the guy looked very familiar. Don't ask. I'll take him away first and contact him if anything happens. With that said, Fang Ye prepared to leave with the man in black who had all his bones broken and could not speak. Etc. Suzuki finally reacted, her expression immediately became serious, and she stood up regardless of the nightgown she was wearing. "What's wrong?" Fanya asked with some confusion. She was still sleeping. She shouldn't know what happened just now. She had been fighting in the man's dream for so long, but Suzuki didn't react at all. Even at the end, there was no movement. I remembered, this guy appeared in my dream. You set fire to it, and your arms grew longer and sprouted bone spurs. The dream ends when he is knocked down from the sky by you. As she spoke, Suzuki observed the face of the man in black robe, and was frightened by the inhuman appearance. Then, she quickly reacted. What just happened was not a dream. But me. Suzuki looked at herself, still wearing a nightgown. Looking at Fanya, who was a little surprised in front of her, she realized. Sure enough, I was still in a dream. Suzuki murmured, and under Fanya's dumbfounded gaze, he pulled up the quilt again and closed his eyes. Dimensional chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 358. Half an hour later. Suzuki tidied himself up and went downstairs slowly, looking at Fanya and the general sitting on the sofa chatting. Yo, have you packed it up? Fanya greeted her very casually. Suzuki's face, which had just calmed down, instantly turned red. She wanted to turn around and rush back to the room immediately. But in front of Fanya, she didn't want to do such a strange thing, so she could only hold on. Scalp walked to the position behind the two of them and also sat on the sofa. Well, what were you just talking about? She didn't want to ask at first, but in the end curiosity prevailed. Nothing, the general originally wanted to pass this matter off casually, but he quickly looked at Fanya, wanting to know what he was thinking. We just deduced how to distribute the man, Fanya said casually, looking at Suzuki with eyes full of appreciation. Who? That man in black robe? Suzuki said in surprise. It turns out that it was really not an illusion just now. At this point, she was about to blush again. Just now, Suzuki showed all kinds of embarrassing looks in front of Fanya, and she wanted to pretend that nothing happened. But she brought it up again. Of course it's true, Fanya smiled slightly and replied as if nothing had happened. Besides, you are also one of the victims. When the military department tortures out his information, they will make it in triplicate and show it to you. Although Suzuki doesn't know the identity of the man in black robe, he can also understand that this man who dares to target a great master like Fanya, and even targets the big bosses of the military department together, is definitely not an ordinary person. If there is someone in their family with great power, how can he surpass the military and the generals in front of him? Suzuki was very worried. I will pry open his mouth as soon as possible and give you both a satisfactory answer. Noticing Fanya's vague gaze, the general immediately made a guarantee. He also hoped to have a good relationship with Fanya and further cooperate in the future. Okay, then I'll wait for good news from the military department. Fang. Ye said casually, stood up and moved his wrists, then walked towards the door. Wait, where are you going? Suzuki subconsciously stood up, but quickly came to his senses and asked a covered question. The 9th restricted area. Fanya answered very casually, not realizing how big a stir this simple answer could cause. You want to go now? The general suddenly stood up, and even subconsciously changed his honorific. After all, no matter how young Fanya looks, he can't erase his status as the only great god who has passed the 2nd to 8th restricted areas. But now, is he too anxious? Although there is nothing to prepare for facing the penalty area, he at least needs to rest, right? Doesn't he need a rest? Of course, there is nothing else to do now. Fanya answered as he should, and at the same time he clenched his fists excitedly. He was almost at home in the restricted area, so he didn't have the awe and fear of the restricted area like others. He was very much looking forward to entering. And didn't you say it takes time? Fang Ye glanced at the general and replied with a chuckle. Indeed it is. The general answered somewhat dully, but soon he rubbed his temples and felt it was natural again. This kind of God is really beyond his ability to understand. Let alone him, I'm afraid the whole world doesn't understand such a genius. Thinking of this, the general felt a lot more balanced. At least he's not the only idiot in the world. Do you need us to send you there? The general asked with a smile, and also pointed to the car outside. After waking up, the subordinates surrounded the villa with the highest vigilance, in order to protect the general. Shame made their nerves more tense, and also made Fang Ye even more afraid. As an ordinary person, powerful people like Fang Ye will always have panic emanating from the bottom of their hearts, which is unavoidable. Especially when they realize that someone can make them sleep quietly without any ability to resist. Fang Ye, you can knock that person to the ground in a few strokes and use him as a footpad under your feet. No need, the military vehicle is too conspicuous. Fang Ye waved his hand and glanced at the car outside casually. It was really cool. There were dozens of weapons mounted on the top of the bulletproof armored car. It looked like it would shine in a war. But Fang Ye, I've seen Iron Man's technological power in the 8th zone, so I'm not surprised by such mechanical power. Then please be safe. The general did not continue to insist, and could only give an instruction. Fang Ye nodded, and at the same time looked at Suzuki-u. What's the matter? Suzuki-u also noticed his gaze and looked around doubtfully before confirming that Fang Ye was looking at him. Even if you don't go with me, you still have to say be careful anyway, right? Fang Ye walked over helplessly and ruffled her hair. Ah! Suzuki-u's little face suddenly turned red. She subconsciously protected her hair, and glared at Fang Ye. After this incident, she felt that there was a little more confusion between herself and Fang Ye. But she didn't. It's okay. Okay, let's go. Fang Ye nodded and said hello and left. He went back to his home first, made sure that no one would come to this small shabby house, and then went directly to the 9th restricted area. There were people outside the 9th restricted area, and everyone was whispering to each other, all anxious waiting for the restricted area to open. I don't know what kind of restricted area we are going to face this time. Yeah, I hope it's not a particularly scary one. The more terrifying the restricted area is, the more we can gain, right? Idiot, you have to live to get the reward. But no matter how you think about it, the 9th restricted area will not be simple, right? Speaking of which, I wonder if that great God will come. It will definitely come. He has broken through 6 penalty areas in a row. There is no reason why this one shouldn't come. If that master were to say it, he should be able to pass the level very easily, right? As usual. Yes, could he have already arrived at the scene? It's also possible. Where will he be? Fang Ye listened to the sounds around him, shook his head helplessly, and waited intently for the restricted area to open. But he was also thinking about whether the men in black robes, the organization the general was talking about, would cause trouble when the restricted area was opened. If they really wanted to target him, I'm afraid the organization would be able to do it. In order to control the restricted area, I am afraid that the thousands of people present are just ants who can be discarded at any time. Fang Ye knew this very well, and this was what made him most unhappy. He hates people who care about human life the most. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dimensional Chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 359. The opening time of the 9th forbidden area is getting closer and closer, but there is no movement at the entrance. The people waiting at the door were also a little commotion. Since they felt that the 8th forbidden area was easy to pass, many people had their thoughts on it. If the 8th forbidden area is simple, will the ninth forbidden area be even simpler? This kind of luck allowed thousands of people to prepare to enter. There are people in the crowd who are calm, and there are also people who are impatient. Seeing no reaction at the entrance, the crowd that had been silent because the time was approaching became lively again. It's already this late, why is there no movement at the entrance? That's right, isn't that the general point? Or should we just stop opening it this time? How is it possible? The opening and closing of the passage to the forbidden area comes from the mysterious power of the world. How can there be any way to interfere with it manually? That's right. What the hell? Shut up, haven't you seen enough in the forbidden area? Fang Ye frowned and looked around. Sure enough, it was the organization that made the coffin tattoo. But if it was really their handiwork, they should have done it in an alien space. After all, that is their home court. They were so violent at the entrance. I'm afraid it will attract the attention of many parties. Once he takes action, he will also become the target of public criticism. Now that his identity has been exposed in the military headquarters, there is no need to worry about being chased by people from the military headquarters again. The general will definitely say hello below, and or maybe everyone in the military knew it, but just didn't reveal it. But exposing his identity directly like this is contrary to his philosophy. Unless, in order to hunt him, the so-called God's agent organization chooses to directly kill thousands of people present. It's not like they can't do such a thing. Fang Ye frowned and carefully observed the surroundings, and soon his eyes narrowed. He seemed to see something strange in the eyes of some people looking over, it's just that there were too many people present, and he didn't immediately seize the specific positions of these people. He seemed to be very cautious. Only people with a certain status in the military department know his current true identity. And this certain, no matter what, they have to have a status similar to that of the general. Standing at that height, everyone is a very important figure in the military. It happened that such a person betrayed the military and sold his information to coffin tattoo guys. Fang Ye sneered and decided to ignore these people and enter the restricted area as soon as the entrance opens. If the entry is successful, then the matter about the coffin tattoo will be dealt with after coming out. But if those with coffin tattoos are, it would be even better if the guy blocked it. Fang Ye swore with his fist that he would definitely give them a profound experience. Using himself as bait, he wouldn't even hesitate. In the crowd, a man dressed in black adjusted his headphones so that he could hear more clearly. Soon, a cold voice came from the headphones. In 3 minutes, the entrance to the 9th restricted area will be opened. What you have to do is to throw the mission items in a different space when entering, and then leave as soon as possible. At the same time, record the spatial coordinates of the young man codenamed Great God, and then your mission will be over. The man looked around uneasily, and from the corner of his eye, he unconsciously focused on Fang Ye. Is that all it takes? You don't have to actually fight him, right? He asked in a low voice, very uneasy. He was able to walk out of 6 consecutive forbidden areas alive, and he seemed to be unscathed. It was hard for the man to believe that the great God was not strong. The other party was obviously a terrifying person. Guy. He only occasionally acquired the power of speed, so he could ensure that he quickly dropped the spatial coordinates and left safely, otherwise he would not have done the mission against that powerful boy. Of course not, as long as you enter the different space and throw out the coffin we gave you, everything will be over. As if worried that he didn't believe it, the other party added. Our agents of the gods have sent out capable officers. Those people are the main force in the siege against the great god. You can just watch quietly from the sidelines. The person on the other end of the earphone said with a smile, and then disconnected the communication. The man took a deep breath, subconsciously put his hand into his pocket, and held the small coffin. As long as he could do this trivial task well, you can get a huge sum of money. Do it. 3 minutes passed quickly. Amid everyone's eager anticipation, a burst of light emitted from the entrance to the ninth forbidden area. It's open, it's open. It's finally time for us to show off our power. Special skills, special physique, here I come. Listening to the noise around him, Fang Ye narrowed his eyes. This was completely different from the way he had entered the forbidden area before. Will the entrance to the alien space glow? While he was thinking, the crowd around him had already stirred up and rushed to the front. Rush towards that light spot. Go. Fang Ye rushed towards the luminous place amidst the crowds of people around him. The moment he entered it, Fang Ye frowned. It was indeed different. The people who entered were also stunned and looked around blankly. The scene. They seemed to be in a starry sky, with stars twinkling everywhere. Occasionally, there would be meteors falling at a certain location. Fang Ye frowned fiercely. When entering the forbidden area, everyone had to pass through a passage. This passage is the alien space. With the support of the alien space, everyone can leave the real world and enter the forbidden land safely. But for some unknown reason, thousands of them are stuck. Stuck in the alien space in the space. Fang Ye had a bad premonition for a moment. So did the men in the crowd. But he quickly remembered what the mysterious man in the earphones said to him when he entered it. He gritted his teeth and squeezed into the man who was observing the surroundings. Fang Ye sighed. As fast as he could, he stuffed the small coffin in his hand into Fang Ye's pocket. In an instant, the man breathed a sigh of relief and wanted to withdraw into the crowd. But he hadn't calmed down yet. His arm was held by Fang Ye, who was well prepared. The man looked up in shock, and saw Fang Ye, who seemed to be nothing, smiling brightly at him. As expected, it was you who did it? God, agent. The man immediately used all his strength to break free from Fang Ye's restraints. But Fang Ye's seemingly slender hands burst out with such force that he could not resist. In an instant, the man was dragged directly to the ground by Fang Ye. What happened in an instant no one could react to what happened, and they turned around until they were startled by the man's voice. They saw a calm young man. Dimensional chosen, only I know Saitama is the strongest. Author, Mung Garden. Chapter 360. At the feet of this handsome young man, a man with a distorted face was holding his wrist and rolling and wailing. The crowd was shocked instantly. Hey, this is too much. Have you started killing each other before even reaching the forbidden area? So cruel. Although there were such whispers in the crowd, when Fang Ye looked around, everyone was silent. It's not that he's afraid of this young man's power, he's just waiting and watching. They wanted to know why this young man suddenly took action. Are you really crazy, or do you have another purpose? It's your fault. Fang Ye looked at the man condescendingly, took out the small coffin in his pocket and threw it in front of him. What is your purpose in putting this thing in my pocket? As he spoke, Fang Ye looked at everyone present without leaving a trace. Of course he knew that this coffin represented what the so-called agent of God's organization was going to do to him. He was not afraid of this. And even hoped that more of them would come. Judging from the head-on battle, no matter how many people from this organization came, he could defeat, kill, and crush them into ashes. Now the man whose arm was instantly twisted by him looked like not very strong, but since he can put this little coffin in his pocket, he must be related to that organization. Maybe he is a pioneer. Then where are the people behind who are really making efforts? Nothing will happen. Don't even do it, right? Especially after his strong performance. I don't know. I just followed the instructions of some people and passed this thing to you quietly. I don't know anything else. The man was sweating profusely in pain and wailed. He originally thought that he could complete the task quietly with his speed. This was also the reason why the organization specially sent him to do this. But he was proud of his speed. In front of this man, he is like a slow old cow, and he can catch him without any effort at all. Who? Fang Ye continued to ask unmoved. Of course he believed that the other party was assigned by someone, but this does not mean that the man is innocent. The guy who can be manipulated by that organization is definitely not a good person. I don't know, I'm just following the other person's instructions from the headphones. The man hesitated for a while, but after seeing Fang Ye's dangerous eyes, he said hurriedly. In order to show his sincerity, he took off the earphones and handed them to him. No need, Fang Ye remained unmoved, since you've been caught by me, I'm afraid the people in that organization won't give you any more instructions, and I don't have to listen to anything. But even so, Fang Ye also kept an eye on it. In the alien space, no signals from the outside will come in, not even radio signals. This man can be sure that he can hear it in the alien space. The other party's instructions are enough to show that other people from the organization have also come in, among these thousands of people. That person is the real killer move of the agent of gods against him. Get your toys. Don't let me see you again. Fang Ye glanced at the man and said calmly. The man immediately held the coffin in his hand as if he was granted amnesty, and rushed into the crowd while crawling. His speed was indeed pretty good, and he jumped directly before the crowd could react. He rushed in and disappeared in front of him twice. At this time, most people around Fang Ye also heard the general idea, so they subconsciously stayed away from Fang Ye. Soon, a vacuum circle appeared around him. Fang Ye he didn't care about the reactions of the people around him, he was just waiting. Waiting for the next person to talk to him. That person is definitely inextricably related to this organization, and is even the backbone of the organization. Fang Ye is looking forward to those people coming. Looking for death. Not long after, a gust of fragrant wind came, and at the same time there was a whisper of a chuckle. As expected of a great god, he was so decisive. The expression on Fang Ye's face changed slightly, and he turned his head to look in the direction of the sound. A charming woman smiled at him and walked out of the crowd. She had beautiful long hair and a bumpy figure. Attractive, charming eyes, red and lightly parted lips. Who are you? Fang Ye smiled slightly and asked. My name is Shimanzu. The woman flipped her long hair charmingly and replied with a chuckle, I heard that you showed off your talents in the 8th Forbidden Area. I have been friends with you for a long time, and I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to be with you. Entering forbidden areas. If possible, could you take me with you? I was afraid of something happening in the forbidden area. Speaking, Shumanzi said with an expression on the verge of tears, and at the same time looked at Fang Ye's expression without any trace. She had long heard about Fang Ye's prosperity in the 8th Forbidden Zone, and even brought out a forbidden creature. It is said that she is a girl from the real world who has been following Fang Ye so she can play the Golden Legend and appear with the power of the Forbidden Zone creature. Shumanzi has never been weaker than others, especially before Suzuki achieved the Golden Legend, she only admired Fang Ye in her life. But I didn't expect that with the help of a great god, that little girl from the Su family would also have a Golden Legend. Shumanzi was very unconvinced. She was better than that little girl from the Su family in everything, but Fang Ye helped her once and made her fly up a branch and turn into a phoenix, which was far more than her. She refused. Therefore, this time, she must strive to be with Fang Ye and let this great god guide her. She also wants to be rated as a Golden Legend. Oh. Why? Facing Shumanzi's loving and expectant eyes, Fang Ye touched his chin and said with a half-smile. Shumanzi was shocked and looked at him with shocked eyes. Why? I am. Shumanzi's charm is gone and he is anxiously trying to explain something. I don't want to hear your self-introduction just yet. Fang Ye interrupted her. He was not in a good mood now, especially when he realized that the woman in front of him was probably sent by the Coffin Tattoo organization. If you want to follow me, you have to listen to me. Seeing Shumanzi's somewhat disappointed look, Fang Ye was moved in his heart and said casually. No matter how you look at Shumanzi, she is a strong woman. She will never obey his instructions, especially since he is still a healthy young man. A graceful woman like her will definitely not agree to this condition. Unless, she is the contact person sent by the agent of the gods. It seems that they failed in the assassination and chose a new method. Trying to use his pity for the beautiful woman made Shumanzi follow him to win his affection. Beauty trap. Fang Ye promises that he will make sure the beauty never comes back.